That's the part no one wants to say out loud, that some men don't want to meet a woman who challenges them. They want to devour her before she ever dares to speak. Because if she speaks, she might ask a question they've been avoiding their entire lives. Who are you when you're not pretending? And when that question hangs in the air, their entire performance begins to shake. See, Jung knew something brutal about the masculine psyche, something most men spend their entire lives denying. That many men don't seek women to love. They seek women to project onto. They seek someone soft enough to control, delicate enough to protect, and small enough to never disturb the dark corners of their unconscious. They don't want a woman they can respect, because respect requires confrontation. It requires being seen, truly seen. And being seen demands vulnerability. And vulnerability, that's what terrifies a man still living under the tyranny of his mother complex, his anima wounds, and his unintegrated shadow. So what does he do? He romanticizes obedience. He sexualizes silence. He praises kindness, but only when it doesn't come with sharpness. He says he wants love, but he can't stand truth. Because love, real love, isn't sweet. It's surgical. And truth? Truth is a woman who looks him in the eye and doesn't flinch when he tries to hide. She doesn't need his attention. She doesn't fall for his charm. She doesn't make herself smaller so he can feel like a man. That's why he avoids her. That's why he can't stand her. That's why he chooses the woman he doesn't respect, but knows he can manage. She's easier to keep, easier to understand, easier to blame. She becomes the emotional sandbox where he rehearses his dominance, cloaking insecurity as confidence. But he doesn't know. He's not winning anything. He's just avoiding the internal war he was destined to fight. The war between his false masculinity and his unlived self. And the woman he disrespects? She's not the enemy, she's the mirror. And the one he's running from isn't her, it's himself. So here's the confrontation. You might not be afraid of women. You might be afraid of the part of you that could actually love one. You might be afraid that if you meet a woman you truly respect, you'd have to evolve. And the man you are now, he might not survive that transformation. But let me ask you something. Who told you survival was the goal? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That was Jung's warning. And it wasn't romantic, it wasn't poetic, it was surgical. He was pointing to the shadow that every man inherits and most never face. A man can build an empire. He can dominate the market. He can be admired by everyone in the room. But if he cannot meet the feminine without shrinking into control, defensiveness, or fantasy, he's still a boy playing at being a man. And deep down, he knows it. He knows that he's not choosing love, he's avoiding death. The death of his persona, his image, his fragile identity, wrapped in performance and fear. And you can only run from death for so long. Eventually, you'll be brought to your knees, not by a woman, but by the emptiness you tried to fill with her obedience. Because here's the real danger. The longer you surround yourself with women you don't respect, the further you drift from the part of you capable of intimacy. You confuse comfort with love. You confuse silence with peace. You confuse admiration with connection. But respect? Respect is what bridges the body to the soul. Respect is what keeps the heart awake when the desire fades. And if you don't have it, what do you really have? A performance, a pedestal, a prison. That's the opening act, the first lie that needs to fall. That love is about finding someone you can handle. No. Love is what begins when you stop trying to handle anything and finally learn how to receive. But you can't receive what you don't revere, and you'll never revere what you keep beneath you. So I'll say it again. There are men who crave a woman's body because they fear her soul. And until that fear is brought into the light, no amount of sex, success, or niceness will make you whole. Because the man who seeks a woman he can't respect is a man who has not yet met himself.
Do you ever feel like someone finally sees the part of you you've always hidden? Here, you don't have to hide anymore. You're safe now. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so we can keep walking this path together. Thank you.
You weren't crazy. You were just the only one feeling everything. There's a silence that follows you when you've been chosen by someone who can't respect you. Not the peaceful kind, the eerie kind, like walking through a room where someone just screamed. But now, everything's quiet again, and you're standing there, holding your breath, wondering if you imagined it. Because that's what this dynamic does. It doesn't explode, it erodes. You don't even realize it's happening until pieces of your self-worth start going missing, quietly, without resistance. He liked you at first, didn't he? Said all the right things, made you feel like the one thing he had been searching for, the missing piece. But the truth was, he wasn't searching for a partner. He was searching for a mirror, one that reflected back the version of himself he could control. And you were too real for that. So he began to shrink you. Not with insults, that would be too obvious, but with subtle dismissals, micro-withdrawals. That slight tone shift when you spoke up, that empty silence after you said something true, that look on his face when you showed your depth, like you had just said too much. And suddenly, you were questioning things, not big things, just your laugh, your timing, your passion, your dreams, the way you take up space. And here's the part that breaks my heart to say. He may have loved your beauty, but he resented your brilliance, because your brilliance reminded him of where he hasn't gone in himself. Your strength reminded him of his fragility. Your clarity called out his confusion. Your freedom, your unapologetic, radiant aliveness exposed the ways he was still caged. So he didn't leave right away. No, that would make it too easy. He stayed, loved you enough to keep you close, but not enough to lift you up, enough to keep you hoping, but not enough to make you feel whole, because he didn't want your truth. He wanted your compliance. And over time, you began to bend. Just slightly at first. Maybe I should speak less. Maybe I'm too emotional. Maybe I'm hard to love. Maybe I'm asking for too much. That's how it happens, you know. Not with violence, but with erosion. You don't collapse. You fade. And the worst part? No one else sees it. To the world, he's charming, put together, thoughtful even. But you know better. You've seen the look in his eyes when you shine too brightly. That flicker of contempt, that buried frustration. He doesn't want to destroy you. He just wants you smaller. Small enough to fit into the role he wrote before he even met you. Because he was never looking for you. He was looking for someone who wouldn't confront him with who he hasn't become. And that's the invisible wound you carry now. That quiet ache of having been loved conditionally. Not for your wholeness, but for your editability. He loved the parts of you that didn't challenge him. The parts that smiled, nodded, agreed. The parts that didn't threaten the ego he was still protecting. And you, in your tenderness, tried to make that love work. You trimmed yourself down, softened your edges, bit your tongue. Not because you were weak, but because you were hopeful. Because you believed that maybe, just maybe, if you made yourself easier to love, he would finally love all of you. But he never did, because he couldn't. Not until he learns to love the parts of himself he's still afraid of. And that's not your work to do. But I know it still hurts, because being with someone who can't respect you doesn't just break your heart. It makes you question your reality. It makes you doubt your brilliance. It makes you feel like too much and not enough at the same time. It makes you afraid to be fully seen again. Because last time, you were punished for it. So you start hiding. You become careful, guarded, hyper-aware. You shrink in advance. Because you've learned that being radiant comes with consequences. And the tragedy? You don't even know when the shrinking began. All you know is, you used to feel like sunlight. Now, you feel like shadow. But I need you to hear me now. That wasn't love, that was projection. That was his fear, wearing the mask of romance. And your soul knew it the whole time. That's why it never felt safe. That's why you were always walking on emotional eggshells, wondering what version of him you'd get that day. Because the man who seeks a woman he can't respect is not in a relationship. He's in a performance. And you became the stage he acted on. But the moment you saw it, the moment you named it, that was the moment the spell began to break. You are not crazy, you are not broken, you are not too much. You were simply awake in a dynamic designed to keep you asleep. And now that you're awake, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to shrinking just to make someone else feel big. You can't keep playing a role that dishonors your essence. You can't keep confusing comfort with connection. Because now, you know the truth. And that truth aches, but it's real. And real is the only place healing begins. You don't see others as they are. You see them as you are. Carl Jung. We think love is about who we find, but Jung whispered a deeper truth. It's about what we project. Because the moment you meet someone, you don't really see them. Not at first. You see a reflection, a movie screen for everything your unconscious never got to express. And for a man, that movie begins early, long before his first kiss. Before his first heartbreak. It begins with the feminine he never got to meet inside himself. Carl Jung called her the anima, the inner feminine soul image within every man's unconscious. She is intuition, feeling, chaos, creativity, emotion, depth. She is not his mother, nor his lover, nor some fantasy of perfection. She is his inner bridge to wholeness. But when a man hasn't integrated his anima, when he has repressed her, ignored her, feared her, he doesn't relate to women as humans. He relates to them as mirrors. He meets a woman, and without realizing it, he projects her onto her. Not her body, her soul. He thinks he loves her, but he's actually just trying to reclaim the disowned parts of himself. She becomes the container for every feeling he can't feel, every instinct he can't trust, every tenderness he was told to shut down. And here's the tragedy. If she reflects the beauty he has not owned, he'll worship her. If she reflects the chaos he cannot handle, he'll resent her. If she reflects the power he fears in himself, He'll try to control her, because he's not seeing her clearly. He's only seeing his unconscious through her face. That's not intimacy, that's archetypal confusion. And it's why so many men find themselves addicted to women they can't respect. Because deep down, they're not relating to the person, they're relating to the symbol. And symbols are terrifying. You can't control them. You can only project onto them. And that's exactly what happens. He meets a woman who triggers his anima, his inner wild, his inner unknown. And instead of surrendering to transformation, he recoils. Because the anima doesn't just inspire love, she threatens identity. She dissolves boundaries, challenges control, invites emotion. And if he's built his entire life around avoiding those things, he will fight her, not with fists, but with distance, dismissal, control, shame. Why are you so emotional? Why do you always need to talk about everything? Why can't you just be happy? Translation: why are you making me feel what I've spent my whole life running from? But it's not her that's making him feel it. It's himself, his unlived self, knocking on the door through the body of a woman. And he thinks if he can get her to be less intense, less chaotic, less soulful, he can finally be at peace. But he's wrong, because it was never about her. It was always about the wound he carries, the unconscious fear of the feminine within. And as long as that fear rules him, he will keep choosing women who reflect that fear back to him. He will either idolize them or punish them. He will swing between obsession and apathy. He will crave the one who emasculates him and resent the one who empowers herself, because both reveal what he's not ready to face, the depth he abandoned in himself. This is why Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You will call it fate that every relationship ends in resentment. You will call it fate that every powerful woman makes you feel small. You will call it fate that your desire always fades. But it's not fate, it's projection, unconscious, repetitive, predictable, and curable. But only through one path: integration. You must meet the woman within, not in fantasy, not in pornography, not in projection, in presence, in tenderness, in the terrifying act of feeling again. You must stop outsourcing your soul to the woman in front of you and begin the slow, quiet, brutal work of reclaiming it from within. Because until you do that, you won't love her. You'll use her. And even if you don't mean to, even if you say the right words, even if you stay faithful and kind, your unconscious will find a way to punish her for being the mirror you can't look into. Not because she deserves it, but because she represents the part of you you still cannot bear to love. So she'll feel it. She always does. She'll feel that something's missing, that your eyes are on her, but not with her, that your touch is warm, but not present, that your praise is constant, but not rooted in reverence. She'll feel like a goddess one moment, a ghost the next, because you're not there. Your body is. But your soul, it's still at war. And until that war ends, until you stop fighting the feminine and begin integrating her, you will keep seeking women you can't respect. Not because you hate them, but because you've forgotten how to honor what they carry. You've forgotten that love isn't about control. It's about courage. The courage to see another clearly. The courage to meet yourself in their reflection. The courage to stop performing masculinity and start living truth. And that kind of love, it can only begin when projection ends. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. But first, you must destroy who you pretended to be. Because here's the brutal truth most men never admit. You're not afraid of women. You're afraid of being changed by one. Because to truly love a woman, one you respect, you would have to die. Not physically, psychologically. You'd have to watch the entire house of mirrors you built. Your performance of power, your curated stoicism, your charming detachment, come crashing down. And the man underneath? He's softer, scarred, still aching from things he swore he forgot. And if you don't know how to hold that man, you'll do anything to avoid meeting him. So you build an ego, one designed not for truth, but for protection. One that says things like, I don't need anyone. She's too intense. I just like it simple. She's crazy. I'm just not ready. But beneath those lines is one confession you've never let yourself speak. I'm terrified of being seen. Because you know, on some level, that if she sees you, really sees you, she might not love you. Or worse, she might. And then you'd be responsible for holding that love, not dominating it, not hiding from it, not distracting yourself with work, porn, games, gym, goals, or ambition, but holding it. And that would require everything your ego told you to abandon. Presence, openness, stillness, listening, feeling, surrender. You were told those things made you weak. So you built an identity that was bulletproof. You became the reliable one, the rational one, the funny one, the one who's always in control. But you can't control intimacy. You can't schedule it. You can't logic your way into it. You can't seduce your way through it. It requires exposure. And exposure feels like death to the ego. Because the ego is a structure built on two lies. I am what I achieve. I am what others believe about me. So when you meet a woman who sees through that structure, it's threatening. Not because she's dangerous, but because she's honest. And if your identity depends on being the man who's always right, always strong, always chill, always chosen, then her truth becomes an attack. You flinch when she's direct. You shut down when she's emotional. You minimize her when she's intuitive. Because your ego has no room for mystery, chaos, or confrontation. And that's what love is. That's what the feminine is. It doesn't care who you pretend to be. It wants who you are. But the man who lives from ego cannot give her that. So he gives her performance. He gives her affection without presence, passion without reverence, attention without depth. He gives her everything except himself, because he doesn't know who that is. And if you're honest, you might not either. You've just been playing roles. Roles your father played. Roles your culture praised. Roles your trauma required. And the scary thing? They worked. You got validation. Sex, praise, power, control. But not intimacy, not reverence, not the soul-deep, ego-shattering, time-stopping experience of being known. Because to be known, you'd have to let go. You'd have to give up the performance, the control, the mask. You'd have to look a woman in the eye and say, I don't have it all figured out. I get scared. I've hurt people. I've run from myself. But I want to stop running. Do you know how much strength that takes? Do you know how much courage it takes to stop pretending? to be honest with yourself, to admit that you've used charm to avoid intimacy, that you've used logic to invalidate emotion, that you've kept women close, not because you loved them, but because you feared being alone with the truth. That's the fracture. That's the lie your ego was built to protect. And Jung knew it. He didn't demonize the ego, but he didn't worship it either. He saw it as a shell, a necessary bridge between instinct and soul, but not the destination. Because the ego isn't built for love. The ego is built for survival. But love is not something you survive. Love is something you surrender to. And the man who cannot surrender will keep seeking women he cannot respect. Not because he lacks the capacity, but because his ego would rather be safe than seen. And here's the hardest pill to swallow. The feminine will never respect your ego. She will respect your essence. But your ego, she will dismantle it, test it, challenge it, not to hurt you, but to call you back to yourself. And if you interpret her calling as criticism, you will retreat. You will call her too much. You will say, she's always emotional. You will reduce her to the one thing she never wanted to be, a threat. But she was never trying to hurt you. She was trying to reach you. And if your ego can't handle that, it's not her fault. It's your responsibility, because you can only love her to the extent that you've stopped lying to yourself. You can only revere her to the extent that you've disarmed your own performance. And you can only respect her once you've begun to respect your own inner feminine. Your grief, your intuition, your longing, your softness. You've been taught to kill those parts. But Jung didn't. Jung invited them in. He knew wholeness is not becoming more masculine. It's integrating the feminine. And only from that place can you meet a woman as she is, not as a fantasy, not as a threat, but as a mirror, clear, terrifying, sacred. The mirror that shows you the truth, not just about her, but about yourself. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Carl Jung, this is the moment you stop flinching from the mirror and start facing it. Because all the illusions you built, the performance, the protection, the projection, they've kept you safe. But they've also kept you alone. And here's where that ends. Here's where the turning begins. Not the kind where you read a book and feel better for a week. Not the kind where you say all the right things to convince yourself you've changed. Not the kind where you find another woman to soothe the ache without healing the source. I'm talking about the kind of turning where you finally say, no more. No more shrinking from truth. No more punishing women for reflecting your pain. No more confusing desire for devotion. No more hiding behind charm, silence, or control. No more blaming the world for the war you haven't ended inside. This is the point where you realize you are not broken. You are conditioned. You were taught to fear the very things that make love real. Taught that strength means silence, that masculinity means control, that emotion is weakness, that needing someone makes you less of a man, that being vulnerable is something you do only when you've earned it. But all of that, it was survival, it was armor, it was inherited from generations of men who were never allowed to feel. So they hardened and called it strength. But hardness isn't strength, it's fear calcified. And somewhere along the line, you inherited that fear. It became your blueprint. So you move through life with one eye open and one arm always holding the door to your heart closed, just in case. But the part of you that's reading this right now, he's done with that. He's not here to perform. He's not here to control. He's not here to pretend. He's here to become. And the first step in becoming is not some grand act of transformation. It's simply this: take responsibility for your impact, not with shame, with power. Take responsibility for the way you've unconsciously hurt people you loved. Take responsibility for the way you made women shrink so you could feel big. Take responsibility for the way you confused admiration for intimacy. Take responsibility for the way you used detachment as a weapon. Not because you're a villain, because you're human. And being human means you can change. But only when you stop protecting the part of you that refuses to be wrong. That part has to go. That version of you, the one who needs to be worshipped instead of witnessed, obeyed instead of questioned, desired instead of known, he has to die. Because he's not the real you. He's the frightened child who thought love was earned through performance. He's the boy who believed that being chosen meant being safe. But you're not a boy anymore. You're a man. And that means you can choose truth over safety. You can choose intimacy over power. You can choose reverence over control. You can choose to meet a woman, not as a project, a possession, or a pedestal, but as a mirror. And if she reflects back something painful, don't flinch, don't fight, don't run. Listen. That's your next becoming. Because every time you defend your ego, you delay your soul. And your soul is not here to win. It's here to merge. It's here to dissolve, to reveal, to remember. It's here to meet itself in the eyes of another and say, I see you, I respect you, and I will not punish you for the truth you carry. That is the beginning of sacred masculinity. Not power over, but power with. Not performance, but presence. Not dominance, but devotion. And it doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in 1,000 little choices. When you stop interrupting, when you stop pretending you're fine, when you stop needing to be right, when you feel her emotions and don't try to fix them. Just feel them with her. When you look her in the eyes and say, I don't understand you, but I want to. That is strength. That is respect. That is the ground where love grows. And when you start walking that path, something unexpected happens. The women you once couldn't respect, you see them differently. Not as small, not as weak, not as dramatic or difficult or intense, but as sacred. Because you've learned to respect what they mirror. You've stopped fearing the feminine in them because you've begun to love the feminine in you. That is integration. That is the end of projection. That is the beginning of real love. Not perfect love, not pain-free love, but conscious love. The kind that doesn't ask her to shrink. The kind that meets her as she is. And you as you are. No masks, no mirrors, just presence. Because when a man respects himself, he no longer fears the woman who does too. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Carl Jung. So here we are. The old identity has cracked. The mask is in pieces. The story you told yourself about what it means to be a man, to be in control, to be desirable, to be untouchable, it's fallen apart. And underneath all of that, something ancient, something raw, something true. It doesn't speak in sound bites or status updates. It doesn't care about praise. It doesn't play games. It doesn't ask, am I enough? Because it already knows, I am real. That is the rebirth, not becoming someone new, but remembering someone you buried to survive. That quiet, powerful, honest self. The one who doesn't need to dominate to feel safe. The one who doesn't confuse being chosen with being worthy. The one who doesn't fear women, but meets them. Not as a role to fulfill, not as a prize to win, not as a storm to weather, but as a soul. A soul equal in power, in mystery, in depth. When that man rises, everything changes. Not because he tries harder, or gets it perfect, or finally cracks the code of what women want. No, everything changes because he stops performing and starts embodying. He becomes rooted, not in his opinions, not in his strength, in his essence. And essence cannot be threatened. Essence cannot be manipulated. Essence cannot be controlled, seduced, or shaken. Because essence is not a mask, it is presence. And presence? It's the most disarming thing a man can bring into the room. It's the thing no woman forgets. Not money, not muscles, not charm. Presence. The ability to sit with her grief without needing to fix it. The ability to hear her truth without making it about you. The ability to stay when every part of you wants to run. The ability to see her not as too much, but as exactly enough. Not because she's convenient, but because she's real. Because that's what you're loyal to now. Realness. You don't need her to shrink anymore, because you've stopped shrinking yourself. You've stopped hiding behind, I'm just not emotional, or that's just how I am, or I don't do drama. You know what that was now. Fear. Pretending to be identity. And once you've faced that fear, really faced it, you become quiet, but not silent. Still, grounded, open. You speak less, but say more. You stop proving and start being. You stop seeking validation and start offering reverence. And the women who once confused you, the ones who seemed too wild, too emotional, too deep, they make sense now. Because you found that same wildness in yourself, that same depth, that same fire. You've stopped resisting the feminine. And because of that, you can now receive her. You don't flinch when she cries. You don't shrink when she roars. You don't run when she reflects the part of you that's still healing. You hold. You stay. Not because you're trying to be a good man. Because you are one. And not in the way the world defines good. You're not perfect. You're present. You're not agreeable. You're truthful. You're not performative. You're rooted. And when a woman meets that, she softens. Not because you made her, but because she's finally safe. Safe to be radiant. Safe to be real. Safe to be respected. And the you that's now watching her, he sees her. Not as an idea, not as a mirror, not as a test, as her. And in that moment, something ancient wakes up between you. Something beyond romance, beyond need, beyond words. A knowing, a remembering. You both feel it. That this is what love looks like after illusion, after projection, after ego. It's not flashy. It's not always fiery. It's something else. Sacred. And sacred doesn't mean perfect. It means true. It means you're no longer acting. You're here. Not hiding. Not manipulating. Not chasing. Meeting. Meeting the world. Meeting the moment. Meeting the feminine. Meeting yourself. And in that meeting, a new life begins. Not a life free from conflict, but a life free from pretending. A life where love isn't something you earn or control. It's something you offer. And what you offer now is real, because you're real now. And that changes everything. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung. So now it's quiet. The fire has burned. The masks have fallen. The shadow has spoken. And here you are, bare, awake, different. Not in the way others will see, but in the way you will feel. There's a stillness in you now. Not the stillness of indifference, but of depth. Not the silence of avoidance, but of presence. Not the calm of repression, but of peace. You've walked through the fire Jung warned us about, the one that burns everything false and leaves you only with what's real. You've looked in the mirror of the feminine and didn't run. You stayed. And in that staying, you found something no man can teach and no woman can give. You found you. Not the boy you used to be, not the persona you performed, but the man you were always meant to become. Beneath the armor, beyond the ego, under the noise. A man who doesn't fear being undone. Because he's not here to be admired. He's here to be whole. And wholeness is not glory. It's humility. It's not power over others. It's power with yourself. It's being able to sit with love and not sabotage it. To sit with truth and not flinch. To sit with grief and not numb. To sit with a woman and not need to conquer her to feel worthy. Because you already are. And you don't prove that worth with performance anymore. You prove it with presence, with stillness, with the sacred art of respect. And here's the final truth Jung would want you to carry. The woman you once couldn't respect, she wasn't too much. She was too true. And the reason she scared you was because she reminded you of the man you were born to become. The one who doesn't hide from the feminine within. The one who doesn't seek control, but connection. The one who doesn't confuse obedience for safety. The one who can meet a storm and stay rooted. That man is in you now. And this is the invitation. Let him speak. Let him choose. Let him love, not from fear, but from reverence. And let the old self fall away completely. Because the world does not need more men who perform love. It needs men who embody it. Quietly, fiercely, respectfully, finally. And you're ready now. You know what's real. So don't go back to sleep. Don't go back to safe. Don't go back to shrinking. The mirror has already shown you who you are. Now live it. Some men seek women they can't respect, but the awakened man seeks the woman who reminds him who he is. Let that sentence follow you. Let it haunt you until it frees you. Let it be the whisper in your ribs when you are tempted to retreat. Because you didn't come this far just to stay hidden. You came this far to remember. And now that you've remembered, it's time.